after that, before we published, I felt like we had a secret. We had a secret, and the world would at some point when we got this published, they would know about this secret, and it was going to be earth shaking. So we thought, and as it turned out, it kind of was. Maybe not as maybe not as big as it could be, but it was important to at least some people. And so it was good. It was a eureka moment. It was it's something rare when you find something that people should have seen before by rights. They should have seen it. But the problem is that when these bacteria or these microbes go into plant cells, you really can't see them unless you have a special, stain to detect them. And the reactive oxygen stain was the key because it was easy to use and because the plants interact with these microbes using reactive oxygen. It was clear, very clear, that those were microbes in there. Of course, we had to prove that in different ways, different experimental. For example, tagging. We had to tag microbes with green threads of protein and stick them in and show where they go in. And there was some work that we had to do to really prove it, to really confirm it. But it was exciting. We had enough on the very first paper, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, so I want to come back to the eureka moment because I think that's really interesting. I think the fact that you had such a strong reaction, the fact that you kind of had that feeling you're hanging on to a secret, I think that you're in the know. This is something where you understand the entire context of this world, and some what like I would trust your gut reaction in a situation like that to know the true impact of that realization. Whereas I think if I saw the same thing, I wouldn't really understand without someone explaining the context, the impact and the importance of that realization and how that contradicts the current standing belief. But so I want to dive back into that and then kind of carry that into the impact of going forward and how people can use this information. But I want to clear up the rhizophagy cycle. I want to kind of picture it in human scale terms. So if, like, let's say the root hairs that are intaking the endophytes, right? That's the term. So let's say the root hairs are like an elephant's trunk. What's the endophytes? Is it like a grain of sand or is it a beach ball? What's the scale of everything? How big are the microbes relative to the roots?
That's a good question. Yeah, so the root hairs, I mean, just to give you kind of a scale, the root hairs themselves are about, they could be, I'd say, around 15 micrometers across, something like that. 15. Some could be fatter. They could be, okay. I use the term micrometer, but it's relative, right? Micrometer, very, very tiny, right? But the microbes themselves are about 1 micrometer, so it's like 15 wide to one, with some
Yeah.
of the root cells, some of these cells being 40, 50 micrometers, in total.
Yeah.
Length, though, they're very long. They could be as much as very long ones could be as much as a millimeter or millimeter and a half. So really, really, a millimeter is 1,000 times bigger than a micrometer. So long, they can be very long, right? They could be very long. Uh, and the so the microbes are tiny, but it's not as simple as just that size, because what happens when they go in and the plant removes their cell walls, oxidizes their cell walls off, they become these protoplasts. And protoplasts inside the plant cell can become very tiny. They bud into little bud sequentially, like little lines like that. And as they bud, they're tinier and tinier. So inside the cell, these bacteria can be very, very tiny, like a fraction of a micrometer, not one, but a fraction, a third or a fourth, little bitty dots in there. And the rules of the microbe and the microbe size change when they no longer have their cell walls inside. It's really an amazing process. The real barrier in the minds of people is that they go inside the plant cell and they don't hurt the plant at all. The plant is in total control of those microbes because of that reactive oxygen, superoxide.